Hello everyone. So we're doing a wet palette review, and what we've done is we've bought pretty much all the wet palettes you could ever get as a mini painter. We started with our own homemade one, and if people are interested in that, let me know in the comments and we'll do a video on how to make your own. This was brilliant. This was absolutely brilliant. Served me for years. It's a proper wet palette. Every time I came to the paints were wet, and there was very little wastage. And that is the main aim of a wet palette at the end of the day. We've got the AK one, we've got Green Stuff World, we've got Army Painter, we've got the Red Grass Everlasting Wet Palette and the Red Grass Extra Large, and we've got the Daler and Rowney, and we've got the SAA. There are a few other little obscure brands out there, but these are the main big boys, so we thought we'd give them a go. Okay then. Okay, so the conditions of the experiment. I will fill the palettes in the manner in which we were about to see a video for, so they're properly filled with water, and then I don't add any more water to them. Now, for some of these palettes, that's not going to work so well. They're designed to have water continuously added to them. But for us, who were currently using this, we didn't have to add water to this for like 10 or so days, so for us to go down from this is big. But well, you guys are going to see how the paint is on these palettes day after day after day. Now, we paint every day for at least 3 hours, or every other day, and we have kept the bands off them, so they are reliant on their own natural seals. Okay, that's it. So we just see how long they last until the water disappears from their sponges. They've all got different sponges, they've all got different papers, so this video in depth will show you how each one performs. Okay, so every single wet palette we've filled in this manner. We have the sponge in here and we've got the paper. So this is for this example, this is the Red Grass Extra Large one, and this is the recent Kickstarter paper that they so lovingly gave us. What I tend to use hot water. I sort of feel it works better. And I completely drench the whole thing. Make sure it's completely drenched. And you want to make sure your paper's completely drenched as well. And then you pour out the excess, and you're good to go. The water's up to the paper level, and you can swipe out any air bubbles, all the good stuff, and that's it. Okay.
This is really dry. One here, and this is one I use a lot. Reds are okay. The brown is always really dry, but we'll see. We'll see. So there you go, guys. See you in a few days. This is after a day. You can see there's a bit of condensation on the lid, so we know all the water's still in there, which is good. And then I open it up, you can see that some of the paints have separated a little bit. So I mean, this at least this way you know that unlike with the previous palette where the paints were dry, that these are all wet. So you can either take from them and remove the excess paint with some kitchen towel and start painting, or the alternative, what I do is I usually dab some kitchen towel over the paints. So I just take off the excess water there and then, and then what's left I can paint with straight away. So if there is blue left, it's perfect. The condition it's in is ideal for me painting, and you can see that we've still got a good seal around the side of the rim. So there you go. This is we painted with this last night, and this is the state it's in. There we go. Okay, this is day 10. We've been painting with this palette for about 2 weeks now, on and off each day, for at least 3 hours. As you can see, all the paint is in a lovely state still. You can just literally take it straight off the palette. We're not having to separate or dampen the paint so much anymore with the kitchen towel, as we did on the second or for the first few days. All of the paint is revivable, and as you can see, there's by a few of the stains on there that a lot of the paint has basically been used up completely, so there's been no wasted paint. There are some dry bits, of course, but most of this is like 80% of it is all still wet and good to use. So you can see there just how luscious it all is. There's no dry clumps, no dry lumps on there, no dry blobs of paint. Fantastic palette. All right, enjoy. So as a separate experiment, we also tried the red grass Kickstarter paper inside of our homemade palette, because we thought, well, you know, if we put the paper up to the edge of the walls, and if the seal is better on our homemade palette, it might help the paints last longer. It seems that that's not really the main factors. I feel like the greaseproof paper that we were using originally, the baking paper, allowed the water through a lot better. And I find with the red grass papers, the paper is not letting the water come through enough to properly keep the paints wet, and a lot of them, as you can see, are dry. They've dried solid or near solid. This has lasted 4 days at the most, 3 to 4 days. And as you can see, a lot of the paint is very thick in there and clumpy. But obviously the neat thing of this is that we can take this paper out afterwards and scrub it completely clean. So this is the thing of it. You know, if people are happy to keep topping up and scrub their paper every 4 days, then this would be obviously an ideal mixture of both worlds for them. So there you go. Some colours are worse than others. Some colours dry a lot quicker, like whites, and anything with white in it tends to dry quicker. But again, some of the dark colours tend to go as well. It's different with every range of paint and such, depending on what they put in it. But there you go. You can clearly see the paper didn't wrap around the edges quite as well as the baking paper did, and you know, it's hard to make it wet. But there we are. Okay. So this is the red grass paper from the Kickstarter after just washing it, and while it was being washed, just rubbing it with my finger, and you can see it has taken pretty much all the paint off the palette, which is very nice. I mean, that's very cool. It looked like originally we were getting some spots of like mold or bacteria here, which is unusual for me because we live in England and the water's bleached, so we don't tend to ever get mold in our wet palettes. But that has all come off, so that was possibly paint. I don't know, but you know, the area is a bit yellow around here, so I'm not sure if that is from. I'm not sure if this has got any sort of like anti-mold properties, or if the sponge beneath it had gone mouldy. So, you know, there's things I need to look into there. But yeah, overall it's looking good. There's a few yellow spots on it. Not sure what that's from. Not sure if that's paint. But yeah, gonna test something else out from this point onwards. So just to give you an update on the Rowney wet palette, by the 3rd hour of painting, the paper had all dried up, and as you can see, the paints have gone pretty dry in there. So this didn't keep well overnight, and when I did go to it today, after the first day of painting, I could see that the lid wasn't securely down. So what I would say to people is that if they do want to continue, if they do want to get one of these for the size, then what I would recommend is ordering the Star Wet sponge and running that under it, because at least then you'll have a bit, it will keep the water in there a lot longer. But yeah, the main issue with this one is just, I don't know, I mean, maybe I didn't properly close it. Not that it made a difference, it had already completely dried up before I stuck the lid on. I could try running it with the Star Wet palette, but yeah, I mean that was bone dry after 3 hours, so there you go. So this is day 3 with the SAA acrylic Keep Wet palette. As you can see, the seal on it isn't great. It seemed to work as sort of like flimsy as the plastic was, but it seemed to do alright, because when we open it up we can see that all the paints are still wet in there. The paper doesn't go right the way up to the walls, and this is essentially a piece of card soaked in water with a piece of thin baking paper put over it. Well, it's their version of it, so it's their paper put over their card. As you can see, the paints are all in good condition, like all of them are still wet, but the paper is starting to crinkle quite a bit, and yeah, so there you go. The paint is all nice to use. So you can see there, it's all in good condition. What we're going to do is we're going to try this one with the Star Wet sponge underneath it, because I feel like this is the limit for this one. The paper is starting to pick up and curl up a lot at the edges, so it's only going to get too dry to use at this point. The water is essentially gone from underneath, but because of how well it brought the water up through the levels, the paints were still good to go on its dying breath. So there you go. There was that one that people could essentially keep topping up if they wanted. But yes, let's see how it is with the Star Wet sponge. Okay, so this is after that 3-hour paint session. I think this is the 4th day that we've been using this, and a lot of the paints have gone dry on it. I've added paints to this over the last few hours, so there are paints that appear to be wet on there, but you can see there is still water in there. You know, and it is heavy. This is heavy with water. So, but there's not enough water in there for it to pierce those top 2 layers anymore. So it's reaching the stage where this is certainly is damp and usable, but your paints are drying up. So this is as far as this one will go now, unless I keep topping it up to the top level of paper there. So I'm going to move on to a different palette now and test the next palette out. But this was very impressive. I liked this one, and even though I wasn't happy having a big palette, and you know, this palette didn't look special, I think I've just found simplicity in its function. I like the fact that it's got quite a deep tray, so that you can really get a bigger sponge in here and loads of extra water. I didn't think this one would be too much hassle to fill up. I think it's a bit of a shame that the sort of cheapness of the lid lets it down, but at the same time the lid was rather functional. So I mean, this, like I said, it's weird because this is by no means airtight, but you just end up with so much water in there that it just seems to do the job really well. So that is the end of this one. We're going to move on to the next palette, guys. So an interesting update on the Star Wet palette sponge itself in this massive palette is that it is still. I've left the lid off this overnight, so it's been like 16 hours with the lid off, and this is still soaking wet, which is fantastic. Don't know if that'll happen with the other sponges. I just think there's so much water in here that it's able to keep like that, and this being a very good sponge as well certainly helps. So bit of an interesting fact for you there. So I mean, this you know, could have been very good if I had put baking parchment up the sides and such. That probably would have held for longer than my previous palette, but by a day or two. But yeah, very interesting. Okay, and right, that's it. Okay, so we did 3 hours of the green stuff palette yesterday. It is a tight seal. This is not that easy to open and close. As you can see on there, the paints are all good, which is really nice after 3 hours of painting to come back and see them all in ready to use quality. So you can see there, this is legitimately a wet palette. Whenever there's too much water on the paints like this, what you can do, get some kitchen towel and just dab it over them. Just turn the towel around, pick up the excess, and you're good to go with what's left. So this is legit paint, ready to use again straight away. It's in good condition, not too thick, not too thin, and this is ideal. This is very good. So yeah, the thing that's nice is you can see how deep the tray is. So the seal is working on this, and because the paper goes right the way up to the edge, I guess water isn't escaping as much as with some of the other palettes. So not easy to open and close the lid, but you know, outside of that, this is great. It feels heavy. The water's still there. This is still filled with water, and that's going to be good to use. I'll use it over today. We'll see how long this lasts for. Okay, this is day 10. The green stuff wet palette. You can see everything is still wet, more or less. I think the side is starting to dry a little bit, so you can see that there's a little bit of the paper started to come away from the edge a little bit there. Yeah, I mean, it's been very good. It's been very good. So 10 days has been the limit with this one. This is the stage when it could do with more water being added to it. But very impressed. So that's without the band. I haven't put the band on this at all when I've been sealing it. So maybe if we had put the band on it, it would have gone an extra day or two. But you know, when it's been sealed that good, I don't know if the band would have really helped that much. But it has been fantastic. So yeah, that's the green stuff one, guys. There you go. So we noticed the AK wet palette started to dry up pretty badly on the top layer after a few hours of painting. We're going to see how it's kept. This is the one that probably held the most water for the size of the palette, and it was hard to close it. So when I did close it, it's ended up spilling water out on top, which isn't the end of the world. I can tell there's water under there. It feels damp. It looks like it's still okay on here. I mean, these are the last colours I put on the night, so they should have been fine anyway, but it looks still good still. It looks still good. Let's have a look at this. I guess splashing that water over the top of it has saved it. So we will see how this one goes over tonight. Okay then. It's still a nightmare to open. Like this, the improved seal that you get with it, obviously. So this is optional. This this bit of rubber that you put inside, that's optional, but it seems to have made a you know, I imagine it helped a lot. I find having to do all of these clips on and off to be a real nightmare, and you know, I find it quite annoying. But I think if you're one of those people that doesn't find this annoying, then this is just great. So yeah, this is working out really well. Okay. Day 10. We are still going through a heat wave here in the UK. As you can see, the pallet still feels heavy, still got all its water in it. I mean, obviously a lot of these are new paints, because I can only use the same old paints for so long, but a lot of these are doing well. So yeah, there we go, day 10. Still all good. So this is the army paint wet palette. The lid comes off really easy, which is nice, and you got your brushes in here. So this was used 3 days ago, and we can see that it doesn't look all that wet in there. Looks kind of dry, and the paint is usable. If I get a bit of water on my brush, I could probably bring this back to life a little bit. But this looks quite dry, and so much so that there's a bit of moisture there, but most of this is dried up. I guess it's okay, but this is already at the stage where it needs filling more. This doesn't feel wet. So sadly that knocks the army painter one out straight away after 3 days. But it is a nice looking palette. There's not much condensation on the underside of there. So it feels like it's not a very good watertight seal then. Okay. There you go, that's the army painter one, guys. So this is the army painter palette. It's 4 days on. Everything's sort of dry on. Everything is dry on there, really. You can add a bit of water to it to bring it back to life. It's not ideal. It's not how I would want it. There is gaps around the top layer, the top paper, and it's one of those where, as snug as this is, it's not snug enough. Like the paper and the sponge are very close to the edge, but they don't properly go up to the edge. A lot of the water is certainly retained inside the palette. This is the bottom of the lid, so you know it does keep water in there when you've got the seal on it, but not enough. You know, I can feel this. There is water in there. It is heavy. It will probably still use it, but this is really at the stage where you'd want to top it up. So you know, this is quite a good midway palette, I think, for people. It's nice. It's easy to open. It's presentable. You can keep your brushes in there, so that's really cool. Having that, it's in a nice case, but it doesn't quite do the job of keeping the paint itself wet. But there you go. Okay. Okay. Well, this is the third day. As you can see, a lot of the paint is dried on here now. So it's still got water in there, but it's not wetting the paint anymore. The paint is turning solid. So we're gonna call it there with this one, because this is the stage when I'd have to add more water to the palette to really keep it all going. So 3 days for the extra large redgrass palette. So that's kind of good, because normally these go dry within 3 hours of me painting, so this one lasted longer, possibly because it held more water. Oh, there you go, guys. Okay. Okay, so that's the end of the test. This was filmed during British summertime. It was incredibly hot. We have 2 streaming PCs in here, studio lights, the full shaboodle. So conditions a lot of you will relate to. What we'll say is that we showed the last day that each palette sort of survived on its own water hold. So you can see that some of them lasted 3 to 4 days, some of them lasted around 8 days. You can make your own opinions up with that. What we'll say is that you know, the aim of a wet palette is so that you can essentially keep and use all of that paint that's on there. So you'll notice on the ones that did really well, that the ones where the paper absorbed and transported the water up well, that the paints looked new the next day or the last day.
because that's what we did. We showed the day after to show you how well the water had been brought up to the surface. And on pallets where the paper wasn't good for that, the paint started to look quite flat and sort of dry. And on pallets where the paper was good for that, you noticed it looked like the paint had just been put on. It was like a bubble that we then got the kitchen towel and absorbed the excess water with. And then you can use the paint that's left to your heart's content. So that was what works for us. We were surprised by some of them. Really wanted the Omni paint to do well. Sadly didn't. Could have done with a much better seal. I wasn't expecting Green Stuff World to come out on top. So Green Stuff World, we've been using them since. And if you can't afford a fancy palette, do not worry, it's very easy to make your own. If you want me to do that, let me know in the comments. I'll show you how to do a video on how to do that. Alright guys, enjoy.